Hey, this is Frank from theartof3dexperience.com, and I created this video for people who are brand new to Cinema 4D, or for those who have tried it before and are thinking of giving it a second chance. So by the end of this video, I hope that you'll be able to create your first model in Cinema 4D. So in Cinema 4D, what we're going to look at to start with is the grid system in Cinema 4D, and the grid system is actually pretty simple. At the moment, you see down here that the grid says 100 centimeters, but normally in architecture we use millimeters as our unit. So I'm going to go to Edit and down to Preferences. I'm going to change my units to millimeters. So at the moment it's in centimeters. All you gotta do is click on that button, go down to millimeters, and also what you need to do is go to your project settings and change those the project scale to millimeters as well. So we now have a coherent working file which has both a global setting of millimeters as well as a project setting. So that is the grid system, and that's basically how it works. And as you can see down here, the grid spacing is changed to millimeters. So now what this means is that one of these squares is 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters, and so that's how Cinema 4D operates. And if you don't want to see the grid while you're modeling, you can also go down to Filter and uncheck the grid system, but that's a bit weird, so let's add it back on. Let's go back to Filter and check the grid again, and there we go. So the next thing for beginners is how to use objects. I'm going to add a very basic object. I want to go for a cube, and the cube is being created in the center of my world, so that's bang in the center, right? So this is my cube here, and it's a basic object, which means it's 200 millimeters by 200 millimeters. That is the basic standard size for a Cinema 4D objects. I'm going to go to change it to 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters, just to make it slightly smaller. And I'm going to try and move it up by 200 millimeters to line it up with the bottom of my cube. 100 millimeters, sorry. Actually, that would be 50 millimeters, because that would be half of the cube. So if you want the cube to be the cube's lower point to be on the ground, you need to change it, move it down by 50 millimeters. So that is on the ground now, and that is my standard cube in Cinema 4D. I'm going to change the display of my object to hidden line, just to see its features a lot better. And every object in Cinema 4D consists of an edge, a polygon, and points. So to see those features and to be able to modify it, you need to convert this object into an editable object. So what you need to do is go to right click on your object in your object settings and go down to the make editable options. That shortcut is C as well. So what that does is it converts your object into an editable 3D object, and you can use any of these three features: points, edges, and polygons, to modify your objects. So if I click on one of the faces of my cube, I can edit it. If I click on the edge, one of the edges, I can edit the edge, and if I go to points, I can also edit the point of this object. So that is how you easily, modify your objects in the way you want to modify them. So I want to right click again on my cube, and I'm going to, well, that's already editable, so that's fine. The next thing you might want to be doing now is to move your edit your objects in a way that you want to edit them. So if I select edges and move them around, you can see that Cinema 4D modifies the object based on what I do with the points, edges, and polygons of my object. So this is how you easily go about changing the forms of your object. The next thing we can look at as a beginner is how to extrude your objects. I'm going to rename this object floor just as an example, and I'm going to go ahead and extrude one of the faces of this cube. So if you go to your polygons mode on your object and press D for shortcut, that will be your extrusion tool. You can see my icon change on my screen. If I click and drag anywhere on the screen, you will see my objects extruding. So let me try on another face of my cube. So let me try this one. That's selected, and now if I click and drag in my viewport, you can see how it modifies the object. So you can do that on any editable object that you create. Also, what you can do, and what's actually quite useful in your modeling practices, is to create an inset of your object. Inset and extrude. That would be something that you might want to use quite often as well as your model, and the shortcut is I. So I for inset. Click and drag on the surface of your object. You can see how it makes it smaller. It reduces the scale of your surface. And then if you go to D again and click and drag and extrude, you see that you can keep going this way, and you can keep adding polygons and extruding polygons and create pretty awesome objects. So that's how Cinema 4D works in terms of creating and modifying object. And the last thing we'll look at is how to add quick dimensions onto your object. And in Cinema 4D, the way you do that is by finding the measure and construction tool, which is not actually very easy to find in Cinema 4D. So usually what you do is you go up to your palette up here and you right click anywhere on that palette, and you should be able to find the customize palette, which is down at the bottom of the menu. And in there, this is Cinema 4D's tools. These are all the tools you can find in Cinema 4D. You can also search for things. So I'm going to search for measure, and there you go. There's my measure and construction tool. I'm going to drag it into my palette up here just so I can see it. There's the icon there. So close that window, and I'm going to go to the point option of my object, and I'm going to click on the measure and construction tool, and I'm going to click on the point and then shift click on the second point to give me a dimension. So that is 161 millimeter on a vertical. So you can also add extra lines. So if I click press Control and then click on the second point across, and that will give you another dimension, which is 100 millimeter. So that's how you use the measure and construction tool in Cinema 4D. If you want to hide the measurement, you can just uncheck the show button. And that's it. That's the bulk of what you need to know as a beginner. And I hope this has been useful to you. And if you have any questions, just give me a shout. And thanks for watching.